Yeah, hang on, he's got...
Hello, Nerdaholics, and welcome back to another video talking about one of our favourite franchises in gaming, which is the Metal Gear Solid franchise. Welcome again, Tom. We've hired him, basically. He's our official fifth member. We're a five-piece now, yay! So this is going to be an interesting one, to say the least. So hope you enjoy, and let's get going.
Just to give a little heads up as well before we go into the retrospective, we're not going to be looking at every single game in the franchise because, frankly, we haven't played all of them. The games we are looking at are Metal Gear Solid 1, Sons of Liberty, Snake Eater, Guns of the Patriots, Peace Walker, and finally Ground Zeroes / Phantom Pain.
Yeah.
Spoilers for those games, just in case you haven't played any.
Spoiler alert!
Oh, and we will be touching very briefly on Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2. So I know we touched upon Metal Gear Solid 1 in the last video. Why don't we talk about just very briefly, what our first introduction to the series was again?
Well, my first introduction was, it was around my friend's house, and his brother had it on PS1. And I'd only briefly sort of heard about the franchise, or the game, I should say, at that time. All I knew about it was like an action game, but I didn't really know exactly the layers that we sort of found out about it later on, like the whole espionage and stealth kind of thing. And as I got there, they were playing the Psycho Mantis fight. It was literally at the point where the screen goes blank and it says Hideo. And me and my mates were like, Hideo? Have they just misspelt video? Because at that point, I didn't know who Hideo Kojima was. Or Hideo, is it Hideo or Hideo?
You can say either or, to be honest with you.
And yeah, and then the whole, like, you have to switch the controller ports over was something that I'd never really experienced before in a game, and the whole third wall breaking sort of thing. Like, couldn't really figure out like how to fucking like defeat this guy because he was so like out of the box and ethereal, and it was just like, what the hell's going on here? So anyway, so weeks and weeks passed, and I was like, you know what? I think I might just give that game a go, like, and see what led up to that fight. And I was just blown away because there were so many different elements to it. You know, at first you just think, oh, it's just a one-man infiltration sneaking mission, which technically it is, but then you find out later on there's so much to this story than meets the eye. And I just got completely hooked by it, just like the whole backstory. You've got a codec system. I was like, hang on a minute, what's this? You can actually like find out so much information. And it's audible as well, so you don't have to read a load.
Fully voice acted.
Yeah, and it was great voice acting as well. Because going back to some other games previously, it was a bit schlocky and a bit cheesy and stuff like that. But it almost felt like, well, it did feel like they really like put effort into it. You know what I mean? And yeah, and just as you go on through the game, the different variations of boss battles, the fact that they've got to use certain mechanics to get through certain areas, like you can crawl. I thought that was pretty bloody cool. There was just so much more story than I originally thought there was going to be. The first time I played it through from beginning to end took me about 2 weeks, which sounds ridiculous now because you could probably complete it in a day quite easily. But back then, I was just so intrigued about every nook and cranny of the game. There's so much replayability to it as well because there's so many things that you pick up from the story if you just go into the codec and speak to the various characters. Like talk to Nastasha. Yeah.
Nastasha Romanenko.
Exactly. And like the weapons specialist, but she's so much more than that. She like gives you the whole backstory of the Cold War. And there's certain like information from that I never really knew. It was almost like having a history lesson. You know what I mean? Almost, I would say the best tool for finding out the best way of winning that boss fight or that particular boss fight, because you just knew everything about every bloody weapon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I'm sure we're going to touch on other things as you guys talk about it, but yeah, and the replayability value as well, because you do a certain thing in the torture scene and you rescue Meryl or you rescue Otacon, you get either stealth camouflage or you get infinite ammo. So you can do like two different things and you can play it so much differently than you did before. So a masterpiece, as I'm sure we're going to be delving into a bit more.
Well, like I said last week, the first experience I had was watching the Sniper Wolf second boss fight, which was at my mate's house, and they used the Nikita missile to kill her. Again, I wouldn't play it for years, as in my mate went to play it from the beginning, and I basically just watched. And it's probably the first game I've ever sat down and just watch someone play and not get bored. Does that make sense? Like not wanting to. Oh yeah, I really want to play. I was actually just quite engrossed in the storyline. It like I think I said it last week that it feels like a movie. Like the dialogue's good enough for most films at the time. So you kind of sit there and you're kind of going, oh yeah, so what's going on? And then the big reveals that happen, and you kind of go, oh my god, oh what? And he gets to the end, and it's just like, wow, you go on a real proper. It's a real journey.
Yeah,
I don't think, and this is just my personal opinion, that on the franchise as a whole, nothing's really captured the Shadow Moses incident. But there's something unique about Metal Gear Solid 1 that you kind of just go, oh, this is just so entertaining to watch. And then I would end up by playing it years later and getting my own experiences of trying to get through some frustrating parts. Like, look for the unpainted concrete wall.
The first time I played it was a rental, and it was from it wasn't like a Blockbuster or anything. It was from like a local rental place up the road where you could rent films and video games. And I rented Metal Gear Solid. It came in just like a blank sleeve. They never gave you the case for it. They left the case on the shelf and would put the discs in like a blank sleeve. So when it came to a particular point where you had to contact a certain individual on the codec, that being Merrill, when the Arms Tech president is telling you, oh, you need to look on the back of the CD case. I was like, what? I legit had no idea what he was talking about. The entire Sunday, I was just running around through the tank hangar, through, back out onto the helipad, not having the slightest idea what I was supposed to do. And then when I took the game back thinking it was rubbish, little did I know. And I spoke to my friend the next day saying, I had no idea. I got stuck. And I said, you need to look on the back of the actual physical CD case. I didn't have the case. It was just like some blank sleeve.
What fucking case?
Yeah. I purchased the game, started the game again. Yeah, the first thing was it just felt like a film. Never seen anything like that before. We had epic games before Metal Gear Solid, like from the Final Fantasy series and things like that, but not to the point where every single line is voice acted, and voice acted to a pretty high standard as well. Yeah. David Hayter's performance as Solid Snake is the best in the first Metal Gear Solid game. I don't know why. It just, every line he delivers, it just makes me happy. Even if it's a very sad line, it's just
well, it just feels more natural, because as we're going to go on, like, he starts to get more gruff and more gruff.
Yeah.
Gruff. And I just think, because he says recently in interviews, he's like, oh yeah, no, I can still do that voice. I just haven't been asked to, you know? So it's like...
Yeah, I pretty much loved everything about it. We'll get into the things we didn't quite like about it in a minute, but once I got past the brick wall and got, and I was able to get Meryl's codec number and speak to her, I just couldn't put it down. It was, like we've said, it felt like a film. I also thought the soundtrack was really strong as well. Some of those songs I can still remember to this day.
Yeah.
I also loved when you look at like the inner sleeves of the booklet that came with the case. I love like how the artist drew the character designs as well.
Yeah.
Just things like that. Just very different from what you saw in any other franchise. Metal Gear Solid has become one of those games where it's such a staple of the PlayStation 1 library. Because when I had the PlayStation 1, I didn't know anybody in school who had a PlayStation that did not have Metal Gear Solid. It's like everybody I knew had it. It was either that or Final Fantasy VII. It was those two games. Everybody I knew had those games on the PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
And it was one of those games that you would just go and talk to in school about. I couldn't survive the torture chamber on the first go. So I ended up submitting to the torture. And then
there are no continues, my friend.
Yeah. And I was just, because I was younger at the time, I was just so devastated that Meryl died. And the game really likes to hammer it into your head, I'm going to have my fun with her before I kill her. And Snake's like, oh, I gave in to my fear, I'm a terrible person, blah, blah, blah. Considering we spoke quite a lot about Psycho Mantis last time, there are other really memorable boss fights in that game.
Yeah.
The one that always sticks out to me is the second fight with Vulcan Raven, just before you enter Rex's hangar. To me, it combines everything that the game has more or less taught you up until that point. Stealth is a key factor to it, but it also, Raven's got this massive field of vision, so you can't attack him head on. You've got to be sneaky.
Yeah.
But the game doesn't really handcuff you. Like with the tanker boss fight, you kind of have to use grenades to defeat it.
Yeah.
When you battle the Hind D, you have to use the Stinger. When you battle Rex, you have to use the Stinger, etc., etc. Whereas with Raven, you can use Claymore Mines, you can use the Stinger, you can use the Nikita, you can use C4. There are so many different tools at your disposal that you can use. That's the reason why I always consider it the best boss fight in the game.
I quite like the. I love that as well, and I agree with literally everything you said about that boss battle, especially when it's a weird one because as he's getting weaker, he speeds up. So he starts running around, and you're like, "Oh shit, quick, get out of the way!" And you can't use conventional weapons, so you have to be really like careful and quick about what weapons you choose to use. But I would say, I know this might be out of left field, but I really enjoyed the Ocelot gunfight because not only does it really introduce you to Ocelot, who'd go on to be a legend of the series, but then there are certain nuances you can use. Like you have to basically wait until he is reloading, and then you can get in there. And then the way that it finishes with the ninja cutting off his arm, and it's like that also sets a precedent for the rest of like the series. Sort of can't go too close to the center, or like the dark, not the DARPA chief, Kenneth Baker gets blown up because he's wired with C4, and it's like holy shit. And like the cutscene introducing Ocelot himself was, I think, quite iconic at the time. So, and it wasn't too difficult either.
It's the greatest handgun ever made.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, when you blow the wall up, just before you enter the room, the cutscene begins. If you go into first-person view mode, you can see Kenneth Baker strapped to the pillar, and if you take the SOCOM and sort of angle it a certain way, you can actually shoot him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can shoot
amazing.
him and kill him. It goes into game over, and it's like, and you just hear Ocelot going, "You idiot!"
That was my job.
Yeah.
There's so many Easter eggs. I love it. I'm going to flip forward. I love the fist fight with Liquid Snake. Considering everything that goes on before that, I mean, it is the real sort of boss run because you do like you fight Metal Gear Rex. It's sort of several versions when
the Rex fight is there.
You fight it in full, then
Grey Fox comes along. Yeah,
comes along. He does his bit. It opens up, and then eventually you think, "Oh, finally we've killed it. Finally killed Liquid," and then it's like. It's just another fight, and it just really. Well, at this point, you're just like, "Oh my god, how are these two still going?" And you're just like punching the shit out.
I can't die, so I'm still live.
It's incredibly frustrating. It was one of the most frustrating of the boss fights, but it's all like the trying to dodge Liquid's punch. I think the limitations on that fight are mostly due to the age of the controls.
It's a bit finicky. So when you think you've done it, he clings on and climbs back up again. Yeah. So I'm still not entirely sure what triggers that.
I think it's a few times, or you've got to take his health down and then kick him off.
No, you've got to take his health right down. But even when it's right down, it still can be a little bit finicky. It's almost random when the fight ends or he clings on.
Yeah,
but I've never had so much satisfaction. Once that was done, once you've done that boss fight, I was like, "Oh!" And then obviously, he's still alive. You got to do the fucking chase at the end.
But as I say, wait a minute,
but it really
not over yet.
Not unstoppable bad guys like Terminator. You watch that film and you fuck. How many times in Terminator you think, "Oh, he gets blown off in the tank," and then he gets into the thing, he's all melted off. And then it's like, he gets blown up by the stick of dynamite, and then he's got no legs, and it's still coming up. It kind of has that. It really reminds me of that kind of 80s movie feel.
It's that sort of relentless chase of like.
But then that chase again is also really, really obnoxiously.
I couldn't stand it. Not long ago, I replayed Metal Gear Solid. And I remember I was messaging you, Sean, at the time. I kept dying at I barely died at all in the game.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And I got to the chase at the end, and I must have died about 10 times. I'm like, what the hell? This is crap. Why can't I do this? I don't remember having this problem, because if Snake gets hit, he takes like a bloody lifetime to recover again.
Yeah.
And then I had to, like an idiot, I had to look it up online. And you can still look and shoot. You can look and shoot in first-person view mode. The only time you can do that in the game, by the way. And they'll say, "Oh, there's a hidden ration just behind the rubble before you get on," and it's easy after that. It was driving me nuts.
And then the other bit, and then the codec bit at the end with Ocelot and the president as well.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah. After the credits. But funny enough, one more point before the liquid fight, Harry, because there's a timer. You have about 2 minutes to beat it, something like 2 or 3 minutes, and he starts the timer but continues talking, and you're thinking, would you shut up? I've lost a good 30 seconds now.
Great. You just want to see the world burn, but I don't. I want to go home and have a nice warm meal.
Also, like another thing that really stood out, I mentioned it earlier in the video, but the soundtrack. I still listen to some of those songs on YouTube nowadays, from the main theme.
Is that the best is yet to come?
The best is yet to come. Great song. What I'm going to do, I'm going to splice in some of the soundtrack in the video here.
Nice.
And so people will just get an idea, and just let the music speak for itself. Like you said, Sean, the best is yet to come. To me, is still outside of probably Snake Eater, the best song that is. For each game, it's probably the best one, and it's always played at the most fitting scenes as well. When you need
during the codec scene when Naomi is explaining about revealing her true past.
That is one of my favorite moments in the entire game.
Yeah, me too.
When you're returning to the I think you've heated the key card or you've frozen it, whichever one it is, and you're on that lift. Yeah.
We're talking about things that are really annoying.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, well, let's just try and hang on to the good bits first, and then we'll get on.
Yeah, but no, I think it's only fair that because we can say everything's good, but it isn't.
You got to give a balanced view on these things.
But that moment in the codec, she wanted revenge. She tells you about Frank Yeager, Grey Fox, Big Boss, and that she wants you dead and everything. And I just love that scene with the music in the background and Jennifer Hale's voice act performance. It's just outstanding.
It also shows she's very conflicted as well, because she did it, but then she's gotten to know Snake.
Yeah, and realised
the whole mission. She's like, "Oh, you're not as bad as I thought you were. You just
pretty much
doing what you had to do as a soldier," kind of thing.
She's also questioning Snake's decisions with certain things as well in the build up to that.
Yeah.
She asks him like, "Oh, you're worried about Meryl? I didn't think you'd be bothered about anybody." Oh, he's like, "Well, I don't want to see anybody die in front of me."
And then she does a proper sick burn. It's like, "Oh, since when did anyone's death bother you?"
Yeah, exactly.
And the Colonel's like, "Naomi, Snake may have killed a lot of people, but he still has a heart," or something like that.
Exactly.
And then he just goes, "It's all right, Colonel. She's right."
Yeah. And I'll also, that's in the torture chamber when Snake's been betrayed. He's battered and bruised. He doesn't know anything.
Lied to.
As in, he doesn't know what's going on because Campbell has, like I said, he's lied to him. He's betrayed him, etc.
Yeah.
And despite all of that, Snake says, "Don't worry, I'm still going to save Meryl."
Yeah.
And he could quite easily say, well, he does say, he says, "To hell with you." And
Yeah,
then 10 seconds
exactly.
later, "Don't worry, I'll save Meryl."
Yeah.
Hell with you.
He's not a good person, really. I just don't like to admit it.
Can you? Yeah. Snake is a good man who has done bad things. Yeah, but it's all in the name of completing the mission, doing what doing what he was ordered to do by his superiors. He may not have liked it, but orders are orders. It's similar to another character we'll talk about in the series.
I wonder who that could be.
I also quite like the foreboding of the Enfants Terribles.
Oh, les Enfants Terribles, yeah.
But
the terrible children.
all the way through it. All the way through it, you're getting little hints, like Vulcan Ravens when he's talking to Ocelot, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the similarities between him and the boss," and you're kind of like, "Oh well, yeah, they've got the same code name. I mean, Liquid Snake nicked it," and then you kind of just get this whole you're going through it all, kind of going, "Oh, there's something going on here," and eventually, when you do get the reveal, and they're like, "Oh, they're both clones." Big boss.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
But I love what Vulcan Raven says there as
fist
well.
fight at the end even more. Like, Jesus, two brothers, effectively the same person.
Well, I love what Vulcan Raven says there as well. It goes, "Be careful, boss. In battle, it is as if he is possessed by a demon." So it's just summarizing just how much Snake can do horrible things, but again, like we said, in the line of duty, because that's all he's ever known. You know what I mean?
He's a good guy.
Crack on.
My Psycho Mantis actually talk about how you play?
Yeah, he does, because it depends.
If you kill loads of people, he actually talks about your play style.
Yeah, and he goes, either goes, "You haven't saved." He goes, "You've not saved often," or he goes, "Oh, you're very prudent and you save quite a bit."
Yeah.
Okay.
Or he says, "You've not saved often. You're somewhat reckless." And he also reads your memory card as well. If you've got other Konami names saved on your memory card, like Castlevania, for example, he will acknowledge that in the cutscene.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. There's some cool like sort of mini boss battles as well, like getting stuck in the lift with like the guys in the stealth camo.
Oh yeah. I love how that comes about when Archon's like,
and he's just like this.
Yes, he is.
The guys with the stealth camo are in there with you.
No, I had 5 stealth camouflage suits. If you take the one I took, that leaves 4. And Snake's like, "Oh, this isn't second grade math class."
But that's the point.
I also like the fact it's like, hang on a minute, what's the overweight low warning on the lift's going on?
How much do you weigh?
But that would take at least 5 people. Too late, Snake. Now die.
That lift is massive. It definitely takes more than 5 people.
Yeah, Otacon, come rescue me. And then Otacon's, I'll be there as quickly as possible. Then if you phone him again, Ocelot's like, "I'm on the way, can't you just relax?" And Snake's like, "I am relaxed." And then when he gets to the door, and he's like, "Oh, please don't kill Wolf, blah, 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 blah. She's a nice person." And Snake's like, "Wake up, you idiot."
Are you insane?
He's just so horrible. He's just so horrible.
Probably dismissive. It's like, there's so many times where he's just like, "Yeah, what about it?"
Yeah.
So impatient. He's like, "I've got to get this fucking mission done. Stop with the small talk."
Yeah. When you first meet Otacon's like, "Oh, you're here to rescue me?" "Sorry, but no. I just need him."
Are you a taco too?
Come on, get out.
And that reminds me again, going back to Kenneth Baker, he goes, "I don't give a crap about you or your company."
Angry Snake is the best.
It's amazing. He's never like that.
From
then he just he's a bit more chill, but he's like completely fucked over.
Yeah, well, he was just chilling in Alaska, and he's captured by the looks of it naked. And 2 hours later, he's
like running his husky, having a whiskey.
Why don't we touch on the things that we don't particularly like, or certainly have, or things that haven't aged well? I think the one thing we can all agree with, the weakest part is probably the backtracking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they obviously did it to pad out the game.
Yeah.
Because Sean, like you said, it took you 2 weeks to complete it the first time.
Yeah.
If you remove all the cutscenes, like if you do a speed run of the game, you can complete that game in about 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's very, very short. You take the backtracking out, you've got rid of like another half an hour almost. The game is very, very, very short.
Yeah.
It is
Well,
not
yeah. No, if you get rid of 2 boss fights, the 2 sniper wolf ones, you do cut out 45 minutes.
Yeah. And if you don't have to mess around doing that stupid car key shit, which means nothing in the end, and that's almost Snake kind of challenging the gamer right there, because he's like, "You mean you had this plan from the beginning just to get me to hit by the detonation code?"
Yeah, it's almost the game saying, "You loser! You actually spent time doing all of that."
And also, it's that you fuck it up and you end up by going to the wrong route, and you heat up the card.
So if you heat the card and spend too long in, let's say, the area where you freeze the card can end up freezing again. So you've got to trek all the way back.
Right back again.
Yeah. It's like when because you have to go back to the second floor of the tank hangar to get the PSG-1, and Snake is just as annoyed as the player is. Second floor basement of the tank hangar. I've got to go all the way back there. Yeah. Well, yeah. What's wrong with you, Otacon? So you go there to fight Sniper Wolf.
Yeah.
Then you come back to pick up the PSG-1. Then you go back there. Then you get captured, and then you've got to go back again. And they are so obnoxious.
They put mines in the
They put all the Claymore mines there. It's such a pain in the ass. And there's that part when you get back to the town, you've got to run up, and you're being chased by all the soldiers as well.
Oh yeah, that was like another mini boss battle as well.
So just before you fight the Hind.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's that annoying
thing. Where are all these guys coming from? How did you fit so many in one little door?
It's basically when it becomes, but that's sort of the point of the game where it's like they sort of ditch the stealth part of it, and it's just more or less balls to the wall action from there.
Yeah.
And there's that obnoxious part where you got to run all the way up to the tower, but they're like those surveillance cameras, but they've got the guns attached to them.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get up to fight Liquid and you're getting torn to shreds. Unless you're using your chaff grenades. And
yet somehow it's almost like the cameras are sentient because they still do that. Hang on a minute. You're supposed to be machines.
Yeah.
But then your blood does get pumping though. That's
what I love about it. There's so much it just makes you feel really there's a sense of urgency there because you see the countdown and then you're like, oh, okay, the music's still playing, so there's some of them still here. And then there's that really nice kind of feeling of relief when it slows down.
True.
Return to your positions. True. Thank God for that.
I'm so dumb. I didn't even realise who Decoy Octopus was.
I almost completely forget about him.
Yeah.
Because he's never mentioned.
And it's like, here are all the different bad guys. And then I was playing it through and I was like, where the fuck's Decoy Octopus? And then eventually it was like, oh, yeah.
Raven tells you what happened because he was the DARPA chief when you first meet him in his cell. That's Decoy Octopus.
That's Decoy.
Yeah. And then that's where it's like, oh, that's why the chief's body was decomposing and all that. No, was that the real chief or Decoy?
That was the real chief.
That was the real chief.
That was the one who had been. That was the one that Ocelot accidentally killed.
Yeah. You fool! You killed him.
Yeah. I also find that when you get the suppressor for the SOCOM pistol, it kind of breaks the game a little bit.
Yeah,
because it's you never really run short of ammo for it, and the game doesn't really punish you in any way for killing loads of soldiers. I mean, I know it has that thing at the end where Liquid, that cutscene at the end where Liquid says, "Oh, you enjoy all the killing, etc." But leading up to that, because if you didn't have the suppressor, the game would be a lot harder in a sense. Because listen, if you're going to take this guard out, make sure no one else can bloody hear it. Yeah. Because the SOCOM and the Farmus, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, they're bloody loud. Yeah. But as soon as you get the suppressor, there's almost no point for stun grenades or any other alternative weapon, because you can just sneak up behind guards, because the AI for the soldiers wasn't exactly high in that game. So you could sneak up right behind them and just shoot them in the back of the head. And
you just crawl under a little crevice. Oh, he's gone.
Yeah, you could clear out. What I would typically do, what I used to do back in the day, and now I try to stop myself from doing it to make the game a bit more entertaining, is I clear out a floor with all the guards, and then it just leaves me free to explore. Pick up any ammo, and you just don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas the other game, which we'll get onto, do punish you a little bit more for doing that.
The only other thing I would say was slightly annoying. I don't know. You guys might not agree. Is trying to destroy the electrified fence, and you've got to guide the Nikita missile around,
yeah.
and then if the gun cameras see it, then it blows up, and you have to start again. And it was just, I don't know, it just felt a little bit.
It was really hard to control.
Yeah. You can go in first-person view mode and control it. Which makes it a little bit easier. The thing I didn't like is the artificial difficulty of the gas in the room at the time.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of those annoying things, like you want to get in, you want to unlock a room, but you've got to equip the card key, but then you lose more oxygen. You lose oxygen very quickly, so you're constantly swipping in and out, equipping the card key. And rations in the gas mask or the box, whatever it is. So really, really frustrating. And
that was a mechanic that he kept in from Metal Gear.
Yeah, I know, exact same. Except in Metal Gear 1 and 2, it's even more obnoxious. Like it's infuriatingly obnoxious. And I know because I recently completed those games for the first time ever.
You need to have the extra amount of life to get through the door.
I cannot begin to tell you how annoying it was. You get about 8 card keys. And when you get to a door, it won't tell you which bloody card key opens the door. So you're constantly going in and out of the inventory.
It's like guesswork.
But it's really, really frustrating. Like really, really, really frustrating.
I mean, at least Doom color-coded them and with the door.
Well, they're not all the same pink-looking fucking things.
I couldn't stand it. I legit could not stand it. The game for the time is really good. But going back and playing it now, you're just banging your head on the wall. It's the same with Metal Gear Solid though, because like Snake controls and handles like a bloody tank in that game. He's not very. It's not the. I mean, the controls are easy enough, but the problem I have is I have like the American version on my emulator, so it runs at a much faster frame rate. But when I play the PAL version on the PlayStation 3 or on the old PlayStation 1, the frame rate's a lot slower, so Snake moves a lot slower in that game.
Oh god.
And it makes him feel really, really, really heavy. And it was borderline insufferable playing it, so I don't really play that version anymore if I can help it. So that's Metal Gear Solid 1. I think it's fair enough to say that all three of us really, really loved that game. It was definitely a must-have to have on the PlayStation 1 at the time.
Especially for like 1998, I believe.
I do like the fact that Metal Gear Solid, our introductions to it are all going to be varied and different, and it's been interesting how different it is. I think the rest of the games, we were all well aware of them when they were coming out.
So Metal Gear Solid 2, I think it's fair enough to say that the hype for this game was
massive.
Huge. Absolutely enormous. My first experience with Metal Gear Solid 2 was when I got a PlayStation 2 and I got 3 games with it. It was like part of this bundle pack. And it was Crazy Taxi, a game called The Bouncer, and a game called Zone of the Enders, which was a Konami game and also a Hideo Kojima game. But that game came with the demo of Metal Gear Solid 2. The dialogue was still in Japanese. The codec was still a little bit ropey, but you get the whole intro scene of Snake on the Manhattan Bridge. You get like almost like the first half of the tanker mission, because it took you right up to the fight with Olga. To say the game took everything from Metal Gear Solid 1 and enhanced it in every way. The controls are so much better. The graphics were incredible. You could shoot in first-person view mode for ease. You could tell the guards to freeze, and you can shoot their radio so they can't signal anybody for help.
You could basically cripple them as well if you were
shoot their right arm, then they can't use a gun. And then you can shoot one leg, that's before they die, and then you could let them run away when they go, the radio doesn't work. I can't shoot you.
And they're just sort of hobbling along.
You're a real sadistic bastard, and I loved it.
Yeah, it was great.
But the production value was just so enormous. It felt like this game has had so much money pumped into it, and it was incredibly polished as well. Like the whole outside of the tanker bit with all that heavy rain, it just makes you feel cold, wet, and miserable. What they did was quite clever. They attached, the raindrops hitting Snake and any of the soldiers. They actually attached it to the model itself. So, and then they would leave the model if you went under shelter. Just real little great tweaks like that just made it such an immersive experience. And once again, the voice acting was great. Everyone's returned to reprise their roles. David Hayter once again smashes it as Snake.
The demo ends when you fight Olga.
Yeah, it takes you right up to the Olga fight, and you can actually kill her because you can actually get a weapon. You can get like the I think it's called the USP. It's not called the SOCOM. It's called the USP pistol. Yeah. You get that in the game. You get that after the Olga fight. But in the demo, you can use that to fight Olga. It's quite funny because I think Kojima thought probably shouldn't have Snake shooting a pregnant woman with a real life. That's a bit grim.
This is before.
I just remember from that demo, like my first experience of it, because I played exactly the same demo, and it was like destroying fruit on the shelf. And just so much detail went into it. You could shoot like a bottle on the thing, and the water.
This was 2000. This was 2001. People, this shit blew our minds. It was just insane.
Yeah.
And did the demo have the little thing of Vulcan Raven that fired?
The silhouette.
They did that at the game, didn't they?
No, it was like a little toy of Vulcan Raven. It was almost like teasing the player a little bit. And you look around the corner, it's just like a little toy. It's just like a little model on the floor, and it's just in front of a flashlight.
You shoot it and it starts firing.
Yeah, but then if you call, interesting enough, if you call Otacon as you see that, he goes, "Hey Snake, could that be?" Yeah, I think so. But I thought he got killed. Only one way to find out.
The banter between Snake and Otacon is so funny as well. So if you hide in, that's another thing. You can hide bodies in lockers, and you can hide in the lockers yourself.
Oh yeah, you can actually have the woman in the bikini.
Yeah.
God damn it, Snake.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place, Snake.
But if you hide in the locker and phone Otacon, Otacon's like, they're like, Snake's like, this reminds me of when we first met. And Otacon's like, yeah, I was the one hiding last time. Guess we're even now. And Snake goes, not unless I wet my pants. And Otacon's like, that's a low blow, Snake. And then next thing you know, you're in front of the new Metal Gear, and you're thinking, "Oh my God!" You're confronting Metal Gear early, Metal Gear Ray. This anti-Metal Gear.
Marine Corps.
Yeah, this Metal Gear that's designed
Gundam wing shit. Yeah.
This Metal Gear that's designed to render all other Metal Gears obsolete. And then Ocelot, is revealed to be Liquid or Liquid Ocelot, or whatever you want to call him. He grafted Liquid's arm onto his body.
No, I live on through this arm. Proper slog.
And and then the Patriots are first mentioned, and you're like, what? And everyone's like, lale, lule, lo. And then he escapes on the tanker. And then next thing you know, there's this 2 years later, there's this 2 year time gap. This guy who sounds a little bit like Snake, but something's off, but he's still called Snake. He's like, I recognize that voice. That's Campbell's voice.
Yeah.
And then they're talking about, this incident's been set up with the big shell, and he's giving you a briefing. And it's like, God, it sort of reminds me of the briefing of the beginning of Metal Gear Solid a little bit. Giving you the rundown that, they're terrorists. They blow up the big shell. It's going to be the worst climate disaster in history, blah, blah, blah. And then you see the character, and it's like, is that Snake? He's got you can see his hair sticking out. From behind the mask he's wearing, and then you start the mission, and then you're talking to Campbell. Oh no, it is Campbell. Campbell's back. Go into the next room, and all the guards are knocked out, and then you see someone else who looks exactly like Solid Snake going up in the lift, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't remember how old I was at the time, but I was like, what is going on? And then you get into the lift, and then all of a sudden the code name is changed from Snake to Raiden. Why is this happening? Then you get in the lift, pulls the mask off, and it's revealed it's not
a woman.
Snake.
No, it's not.
It's Vince McMahon.
And it's everyone collectively went, what?
Yeah. It was really, really jarring.
Yeah.
And incredibly controversial for the time. Talk about having the rug pulled from underneath your feet.
Subverting expectations.
And how they managed to keep that a secret is just beyond me.
My first experience with, because I didn't play the demo, but I've said before that I used to collect and read PlayStation magazine. And especially after Metal Gear Solid had been out for quite a while, and then the cliffhanger that's left at the end of the closing credits, where you have, no one knows that you were the third Solidus or whatever it is. It just boggled my mind how they could improve anything from Metal Gear Solid, but obviously they did, and did it in a big way. And the thing I remember reading, it was just like a preview article, and it was the soldier, like the new soldiers, and how they look really lifelike, and they were talking about how they've improved like their movements, so they actually are modelled on actual.
They
real
only
marines and
showed
stuff.
footage from the tanker. They didn't show
exactly.
any other footage.
Yeah, and just like
Nothing.
just images
Nothing.
and,
Yeah, and also they showed footage that isn't actually in the final game.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
footage of
exactly.
Snake running away from like the ship sinking, and you see him running away from all the like that scene from the Titanic. You know, all the the tidal water. Not in the game.
No,
never happened.
So, like you said, so when you actually start playing the game and you get to the end of the tank, you're thinking, okay, it's 2 years later. Obviously, it's going to go back to Snake's next mission, and then you find out, oh, actually, no, it's not Snake. It's someone completely new, and you're playing as this character for the majority of the game. And my first impression was like, what is going on here? Like, I want to play as Snake.
I think most people had that impression. Raiden is like the antithesis to Solid Snake.
Yeah.
All of his missions were done in VR.
Yeah.
He has no real major experience. You know, Snake has this really rugged, look to him.
Yeah,
but also a really good looking. But he's also, you consider, a really good looking bloke as well.
Yeah.
Whereas Raiden has a very feminine look to him, for lack of a better expression, for lack of a better term.
Exactly.
And he kind of comes across at the beginning like a little bit whiny. It's like it's almost a little bit too much for him to handle.
And he's just he's questioning everything, but not in the way that like Snake would question why things are going on. He's just questioning things because he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do that? Blah blah blah, blah. And it's like, shows just how it really works to a good standard, because you're seeing Snake from a different point of view.
Yeah.
You're seeing it from the outside looking in, and it, to me, like
Raiden is always a step behind Snake.
Exactly.
Like, for example, Snake has already infiltrated it. Snake has knocked out all the guards, and Raiden's like, he's always a step behind him. He's never quite on that level of Solid Snake. And Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of those games, at least for me, it gets better every time I play it.
Yeah.
Because it's the more you start to understand the concept of what Kojima was going for.
Yeah.
When you first play it, I'm just thinking to myself, I don't want to play as this guy. I want to play as Solid Snake. Yeah. I have no interest in Raiden.
When does it switch back? Come on, it's going to switch back.
Yeah, no,
it never does.
You think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But another prime example of Raiden's lack of experience, like when Snake first meets Psycho Mantis, he's like, active camouflage. I hope that's not your only trick.
Yeah.
Whereas when Raiden confronts like Vamp and Fortune later on, who are like this game's version of Foxhound, they're called Dead Cell.
Yeah.
He's having like a mental breakdown. It's like being in a nightmare you can't wake up from. You know, the complete and utter opposite to what how Snake views these things.
Yeah, because he's had real world battle experience.
You remember when they did the VR missions game for the PlayStation?
Yeah.
Raiden's basically done like 1,000 of those missions, basically.
Exactly.
More like 300 missions or whatever it was. And they even reference it in the game.
They do.
When you first see Snake in the Big Shell, he's sort of in disguise, and he's going under a different alias. He's called Pliskin, which is like which is another nod to, which is a nod to
yes, it is. It is a nod to
Escape from New York. Yeah. Once again, you're saying to yourself, I know who you are.
You all know you have the same voice as the Snake that we used to. You look like him. Okay, the graphics are obviously enhanced. You can actually see his eyes open. Before you couldn't really. And actually, I know this sounds a bit silly, but one of the things I was looking forward to most about this game was the codec, and they actually when it shows him their animated faces rather than just like. And this was good in the first game with the anime looking expressions, but they actually made it into like a 3D model. Thought that was really cool.
If you press I think it's like R3 or L2 when you're having a codec conversation, if you listen very carefully, you can hear what the characters are thinking. And then it's later on revealed that this whole Big Shell thing, part of this plan for the Patriots to basically create another, or not really create like another Solid Snake, but stress test a soldier to the maximum limit. And they based that on the Shadow Moses incident.
Yeah.
Hence why there's the ninja in there. Dead Cell replaced Foxhound.
Yeah.
Colonel Campbell.
Well, it's also what blows your mind like a bit later on is when you find out from Oracle, and he goes, this is jumping ahead a bit. Because the Patriots have been dead for at least 100 years. Mm-hmm. And so it re-emphasizes that kind of So what the fuck is controlling everything? You know,
what's
yeah.
going on?
Yeah, and the only thing that they didn't take into account was the real Solid Snake showing up.
Solidus has been masquerading as Solid Snake,
Yeah.
and then you finally get the admission from Pliskin where he goes, "No, that is not Solid Snake."
Yeah.
That gives me goosebumps every time when he arrives in the helicopter. It's like, yeah, finally.
Probably touch on Solidus a little bit. He is like the perfect clone of Big Boss.
Yeah.
Whereas Liquid and Snake weren't quite that, but Solidus was like, if you were to literally recreate Big Boss, Solidus is Big Boss.
Yeah.
In every way, in every sense of the word.
But it's interesting also how you find out, he actually has a relationship with Raiden. And then that kind of unfolds into Raiden is actually, he did a lot of horrible things when he was a kid.
Turns out he's got more experience than he's got more experience than the game lets on at the beginning.
Exactly, and more than he's willing to remember, and he's repressed those memories. And it's Solidus is basically like using him as an example of the horrors of war, and I'm trying to liberate us from this.
Yeah, so you almost feel sympathetic towards Solidus, don't you?
Yeah, in a kind of twisted way, because he's an asshole, but he's again he's just trying to break free from the control. It just so happens that he used Raiden as his own sort of fucking personal tool, but and he's not going to stop at anything to let that
Well,
let
again,
that go.
it also mirrors the relationship that Solid Snake has with the DOS. Big Boss.
Yeah,
because Ocelot reveals all in the end, because it's always Ocelot. Yeah, Raiden and Solidus is equal to that of Snake and Big Boss. The moment when you kill Fat Man, is when the recreation of Shadow Moses really does begin.
Kicks in.
Yeah, because Fat Man was essentially brought in to test out Raiden's skills. But if he didn't defeat Fat Man and the big shell exploded, then that's the end of it. Then the experiment with mission over. But Raiden did beat Fat Man, and that's when then create all these very similar scenarios to Shadow Moses. It's just so clever. It really
also is. Speaking of the ninja as well, and obviously you find out that it's Olga, and then there's another backstory about her, how her child was taken away from her by the Patriots, and so she has her own agenda that she needs to fulfill, and it's more than just it's more than parallels. It's just there's more depth to each character that they let on at first, which I quite appreciate. They're not just there for the sake of being assholes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, There's that, and it's also a game that really touches further on Snake and Otacon's relationship when Otacon's sister dies. I mean, it's a really heartbreaking scene. I didn't really have that much emotional connection to Emma Emmerich, to be frank with you.
It was annoying. It was a protracted escort mission at the time, wasn't it? Really?
Oh, there was an annoying escort mission.
Yeah. Especially the underwater bit, because it kind of controls like arse, and they've got mines floating in there as well. Emma can't take many mines to the face, so she, you kind of end up
not like Sniper Wolf from the Nikita.
Not like Sniper Wolf. She can take a good load of Nikita.
Yeah, but then that always reminds me of that classic line, "Colonel, we've managed to avoid drowning."
Ryder, what's your status? Colonel, we've made it through the wreckage. We've managed to avoid drowning. Good job.
I wonder whether that must have been Hideo just trolling us, or whether that was just unintentionally as funny as it came.
I think it was totally unintentional. That is an amazing line of dialogue.
It did what number one did again, though. I kind of came out at the end of 2 and was like, I have so many more questions. Yeah. This game didn't answer any of the questions I had from the first game.
Yeah. But it's that big revelation at the end, like when you're on top of Arsenal Beer, and then all of a sudden, you think Solidus has unhatched this big dastardly plan, and then Ocelot comes out and goes, actually. Hold my beer. It's like, this is more than I've been letting on the whole time, and it's like, oh fucking hell, here we go again.
I'm making this. Goodbye.
Yeah, and then Liquid takes over, and it's like, well, I'm gonna go off and like use this big Metal Gear to fuck up the Patriots, even though then we find out aren't actually alive anymore.
Remember when? What's your opinion on the whole Arsenal Gear moment where Ryder's running around in the nip? And when
the whole AI just goes to shit.
The AI starts going mental because her virus
GW
GW starts going
You've been
completely
playing the
berserk.
game too long.
Yeah, right.
Dude, seriously.
Right.
When I got to that bit, I was off sick. I think I was off sick from school or whatever. I'd been playing the game virtually all day.
Yeah.
I got to that bit. So, and I did, because I was quite young. I wasn't quite sure what was happening.
Yeah.
And when the colonel phones you on the codec, it says, Raiden, turn the game's console off right now. You've been playing for way too long. And Rose is like, you'll hurt your eyes if you sit too close to the TV. And I'm thinking to myself, I was thinking, holy shit. I thought the game was telling me off. Like, no, turn it off. You've been playing it for way too long now. And then it sort of dawns on you in the end, oh no, it's just this big AI going absolutely mental. They start showing like these first Metal Gear game, Infiltrate Out of Heaven and all of that. And
Scissors, 61.
Just so many classic
when
lines.
The purple tuning fork goes across the sky. I'm like, what is the Colonel on right now? Has he been drugged or is he, you know what I mean? That's actually funny enough. I actually got really quite cut up because I thought
another one. He starts saying, "I saw a guy leaving Rosemary's apartment the other day. They looked kind of intimate." Sorry, I shouldn't have brought this up in the middle of the mission. It's like, what the hell?
But I got really devastated. It was like, oh man, so Colonel Campbell from Metal Gear Solid 1 was an AI the whole time. And it's like, no, it wasn't. It was just.
But that's when, like, the game, because when you reunite with Snake, infinite ammo. And
so many cool
once again, Snake's so cool. He's got the infinite ammo bandana and everything.
Yeah, like, where's mine? I earned that.
Yeah. You can have this sword. I don't want the goddamn sword. Give me the bandana. The sword controls like arse.
Yeah, it really does.
Right. Especially the sword fight you have at the end.
Solidus, They just drop this gimmick on you at the end. Yeah, get good, noob. It's almost like the game itself starts to crash because when you play as Raiden in the big shell, if you die, it doesn't say game over. It says mission failure.
Yeah.
And when you start fighting all of those Arsenal soldiers, the game's glitching out, and you see the game over screen again, and it says fission mailed and stuff like that on it. It's because the game's going absolutely nuts.
But it was such a jump up in mechanics as well. What you could actually achieve and do, what your character could move about, and the
game also ran in 60 frames per second as well.
Oh, did it?
It did, yes.
Holy shit!
And even down to sort of things like when the alerts come off.
Yeah.
It was it punishes you.
Yeah. Oh, even if you try and hide,
guys turn up, 2 with fucking riot shields.
Oh god, yeah.
And then it takes, and then like the sort of the evasion takes a lot longer than it did in the first game. So you have to be really fucking stringent about where you're going to hide or what you're going to do. There
are also some rooms that you enter as well where it's best to just let the guards alone because they constantly phone in and reporting that nothing here. But as soon as you knock that guard out,
you hear a radio call.
Like, what's going on? Where's your status report?
Then go back to that. But I love the fact that you can see them, like if you're looking from a distance, and you can see there's one on the floor asleep. Like if you've used like the sleeper gun. I can't remember the fucking name.
M9.
Yeah, and then you see one of them. That's it, the M9, and you see one of them walk up to him, and then they just give him a kick, and then they wake up. It's just little things like that. I've just really liked.
What were your guys' opinions on Metal Gear Ray?
I didn't like Ray. I always preferred Rex.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Okay, well that's the end of that question.
Here's a funny one. Did you ever shoot the seagulls and get the annoyed message?
They phone you up and tell you what.
But stop killing the birds! What did the birds do to you?
Don't you have anything better to do?
You can slip in them. You can also slip in the bird shit as well.
Yeah. And then that bit where it's one of the struts on the big show when you're sort of like really close to the wall, and then like one of the soldiers above you goes for a piss, and the colonel's like, "Oh, my apologies,
my sympathies, right?"
Yeah, that's it. They don't call these web works for nothing.
What do we consider some of the weakest aspects of Metal Gear Solid 2?
Just the EE escort mission stuff.
It
just dragged for me. And I know there was like the old emotional payoff with Otacon, and that was quite an emotional scene. But like the whole thing of dragging her from here and swimming. And...
No, I agree. That is annoying.
I just didn't like Dead Cell.
No, they were definitely not on par with.
with all the ones we remember from the first game, and they just don't really hold a candle to any of them.
It's Vamp, Fortune, Fat Man, and Solidus. Because Solidus is sort of the leader, because he's pretending to be the president, but he's also pretending to be Solidus. I also find the actual general design of the big shell quite bland.
Yeah.
I don't find it as memorable as the Shadow Moses Island.
Yeah.
I mean, in my mind's eye, all I can see is orange.
Yeah, it's very orange. Yeah,
it's just a bit. Yeah, it's a bit too bright, and I suppose maybe that's just because we're used to.
No, it's not the fact that it's bright. It's not the fact that it's bright that bothers me. It's just I just find it quite. It's just generally. It's just bland in general.
Yeah.
I think also that they had to cut chunks of it out as well, because the big shell's designed as two hexagons joined together. And I think at some point you were meant to go into the second strut and explore those other areas, but I think they had to cut it due to time. Yeah. So they use the whole C4 thing where, you know, half a good chunk of it ends up getting blown up. So I find the general design of it quite bland. I've grown to really like Raiden as a character. The more I play it, at first I wasn't too sold on it, but the more I play it and the more I understand what they're going for, the more I like him as a character. Yeah. But still to this day, his relationship with Rose does nothing for me.
Do not care at all about them.
Nothing for me at all. And it's funny because Raiden is treated like such a dumbass in that game because he's talking about everyone. Oh, but you know, they want to blow up the big shell and they want $30 billion. And Ames is like, what the hell are you talking about? What are you babbling about?
Commanding officer.
And then Snape knows pretty much everything that is going on. And Raiden's like, why didn't you tell me? You never asked.
And then it happens several times, and then eventually it gets to the point where Snake gets angry and he's like, "You didn't ask."
They got like these porn books to use to distract soldiers. If you equip it and phone Snake, he's all like, "Raiden, what have you got there?"
Oh man, yeah. The thing that I thought was kind of weird was when you finally meet the real president, and then the first thing he does is go to grab your crotch.
Raiden's balls.
Yeah. All right, Hideo, what are you
He's like,
doing?
You're a man. So Metal Gear Solid 1, we all love. Does that apply to Metal Gear Solid 2? For me, I've always loved the game, and I totally understand why people got really frustrated with the bait and switch. But the more I play Metal Gear Solid 2, I think it's an amazing game.
I love the tanker, not so still sold on the big shell. I never really liked it that much.
I like bits and pieces of the big shell. Like I like what they were trying to go for, and some of the boss battles were like I thought the Fat Man one was quite entertaining. Like where you have to like defuse the bombs and stuff like that. And there's like a backstory between Peter Stillman.
Stillman,
yeah. And then it was like, oh, it turns out that he was trying to lure me here the whole time, and I've got to sacrifice myself. I thought that was pretty cool. But on the whole, I was just kind of disappointed with the boss battles in general. I think the overarching story and the fact that you, like I said before, that you see Snake from a different perspective were the things that sold it to me. It took me a while, but like Harry said, I think the tanker mission for me was like definitely an extension of Metal Gear Solid 1. And fair play for Hideo for trying something different and subverting expectations.
For me, he took a risk, and it's one of those risks that paid off like a few years later, if that makes any sense.
Once you have time to digest it all, and like looking back now, like freaking 20 years later.
One thing I will say, the game, and I don't just mean mechanically and graphically, but the game...
Is there a fly?
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. But the game feels very different to the first one as well. Everything, like the soundtrack is very different. I don't know how to describe the soundtrack in that game, but it's not quite in your face. It kind of sort of sits back in the background a little bit more. I don't know the word to describe it, to be honest with you, but it is very different. I can't think of any other games that have a soundtrack quite like Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah,
I don't hate the game. I like the mechanics, the things that you can do in the game, and also just the little details, like being able to shoot like a bottle and have the water spray out of the bottle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Really, really enjoyed the level of what they've gone to in that game. It's just that it suffers, and it's probably going to be my same complaint about 4 when we come on to it. It's short period of gameplay, really long cutscene.
The beginning of Big Shell, in particular, it's constantly interrupted by cutscenes and codec calls, and they go on for an eternity.
Yeah.
The cutscenes for the most part are quite exciting though. Like when you first encounter Vamp.
It's not boring.
Yeah, it's not boring. But if you and you can skip these cutscenes. It's not like Metal Gear Solid. It's not like Final Fantasy X where you have to sit there and watch through every single.
Yeah, that's a good show. Yeah.
So
the loading screen.
Yeah, but the loading screens are almost non-existent in that game, though.
Yeah.
So the fact that they managed to get that much into the game and have loading screens almost a non-entity is so impressive.
Yeah. And was it one disc this time? I think
Yes, it was one disc. It was one disc. Yeah.
Well, overall, it's like we are reflecting the demographic, the opinion of it. You really like it. I'm kind of in the.
I consider myself loving it now, but it did take a while to get there. It's like once you watch a few people really deep, a lot better than we are now, but really deep diving into the lore. But they've done they really know almost every single aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a light bulb goes and he's like, okay,
yeah,
I get it now. So, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater.
Right. I'm going to come at this as a slightly different. I really was underwhelmed when I first heard about Metal Gear Solid 3 because I was so disappointed at the fact that it was going to be a prequel.
Yeah, me too. Because
I was like, this comes back to my point about the end of 2. It gave me so many. I got like double the amount of questions I had from the first game. I had all the questions from the first game that didn't get answered. That I was just like, hopefully 3 will answer these. And then it was like announced it was a prequel. I was like, well, it's not going to answer any of my questions because
not only that, but you're still not playing as Snake, like Solid Snake anyway. So it was like, oh god, we're playing this big boss then. Okay, we'll see.
With Metal Gear Solid 3. I literally didn't really follow any of the hype for it. I had no idea why. I felt, I wouldn't say underwhelmed, but I don't know. I was interested, but I wasn't interested. I don't know how to describe it. I just didn't notice any big trailers for it or anything like that. Yeah, but I bought it when it came out, and I was like, "Oh, we're playing as Snake again." And then it was like, "But it's set in 1964," and it didn't quite click. And then,
is this like a VR mission that he's
doing? Yeah. I thought it was something along those lines, and then obviously you sort of back after a little playing for a little bit. Oh no, it's about Big Boss. Yeah. This guy we've heard so much about. Because even if you play Metal Gear 1 and 2, you don't really know that much about Big Boss.
No.
You've heard a lot about him in Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. Yeah, it was very, very, very different. There's no Soliton radar. Your equipment is a lot more different. You don't have a codec, you have an actual radio now.
It's open world, pretty much.
You have an entirely new team of people speaking to you over the codec. Set within a time when the world, was on the brink of what we thought was going to be a real problem with like the Cuban Missile Crisis and whatnot.
Yeah.
So tensions between America and Russia were incredibly high.
Not much has changed there.
Not much has changed, though. Essentially, a very young Big Boss called Naked Snake being sent on this mission called the Virtuous Mission to retrieve this scientist called Sokolov, and basically bring him back to the West. So, and that's basically the mission in a nutshell, because he's developing some new type of weapon, and the Americans don't want the Russians to get their hands on it. They want to bring him back to America. And Sokolov wanted to be brought back to America because he'd sort of become terrified of the thing that he was creating, which was basically this game's version of Metal Gear. I'm just going to say this now, Metal Gear Solid 3 is my favorite game in the entire franchise.
I fell in love as soon as I started playing it.
Yeah.
So apart from, I know I say my gripes leading up to it, I was quite grumpy. But once the game, I started playing the game, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I love it.
I think it's fair enough to say this is the best game in the entire franchise.
He takes the toke on the cigar and he chucks it out, and then he's just about to jump
amazing
on.
opening. And I also love the new approach to the stealth mechanics as well, because the Soliton radar kind of made the previous games quite easy. Yeah. And you also spend more time looking at the radar than you do at the actual game itself. So they got rid of that. They introduced the camouflage system. So you can go into your inventory and how easily spotted you are is depending on the percentage of your camo index. They also introduced like some survival mechanics to it as well. You had to eat food. You had to hunt for your own food. Because Snake not only had a health bar, he had like a stamina bar as well. You also had to heal yourself. Like if you got injured, your health bar would only heal to a certain point, so you had to go into like this cure menu, mend broken bones, get bullets out of your body with your knife, and things like like cure burns, all sorts of things. And it just really added. Somehow they managed to add another whole new layer to the game, and the story is just incredible. It is so damn good. I think the boss is really the catalyst that kicked off the entire saga. She is the main reason why all of everything that happens.
Why the whole philosophy of Big Boss and another character we'll get into in a minute led to everything up until now, present day, and in the future. Exactly that. I really like the Cobra Unit. You don't know that much about them, but I don't feel like you need to know that much about them. All the boss fights are strong. When I first played the game, I hated the boss fight with the end. Yeah. But now I think it's one of the sniper. But now it's like this boss fight is amazing. The amount of freedom they give you in the different in the way. What I love about that as well is the fact that there's no boss battle music with that.
No, completely
so quiet
silent,
and atmospheric. And how it would be, what I mean?
I did find out the cheese to get round.
Change the internal clock on the
PlayStation. Sell it to a month.
Dies of old age.
Dies of old age, and it's so sad. It's really sad because you're like, oh, I wasn't there for when that final battle that you always were saving yourself for, and it's like, you're dead. It's really sad.
But also, I think you can kill it. There's another thing, you can kill him when he's sitting in the wheelchair.
Just before he got. Yeah, when you defeat the Pain, which is the first member of the Cobra Unit you defeat, you have this cutscene, and the end is wheeled out in that wheelchair. You're right, Sean. And when the cutscene ends, because you can get a sniper rifle fairly early on in the game, you can. If you look through your goggles, you can see the end turn around in his wheelchair and go into the warehouse. But you can take your sniper rifle and shoot him and kill him, and he doesn't appear later on in the game.
That's just it. There's just the end of the end straight away.
You can also kill his parrot or his bird, whatever it is, during the boss fight, and you can even go, "You killed my parrot!"
And then he gets really angry.
Then he gets really annoyed and starts making mistakes. Also, they managed to come up with the most unlikable, despicable piece of shit villain you could ever imagine. That being Colonel Volgin. This guy doesn't have a redeeming bone in his body. He's very one-dimensional, but I kind of love him for that reason.
Do you know what that reminds me of? It's kind of it kind of mirrors the trope of the '60s Bond kind of
proper.
Very much like
amazing.
There's no grey area with this guy whatsoever. He's just any piece of shit.
Like Harry just said, if anyone has the title of "I'm evil," it's by far Vulcan. He is so horrible. It's everyone. And how could we forget a very young Revolver Ocelot?
Really good.
Pretty good. It's like Big Boss just treats Ocelot like
from the beginning, because he's got a Mauser to begin with.
Yeah.
He's got a pair of Mausers.
Then he switches it to the Colt Single Action Army, which is what he's later known for.
Obviously.
But then he scolds him because, that engraving gives you no tactical advantage, and smacks him around again.
Might as well have taken the gun off him and butted him with it.
You're not that.
Like Ocelot is really treated like a chump in this game quite a lot of the time. But then when you get to that ending, you realise he's the smartest one there.
Oh, yeah. What I love about that sequence early on is that you find out it kind of well, I was going to say it's kind of an Inglourious Basterds thing. The Inglourious Basterds was following this. How that you find out, your Russian's pretty good. So they're not even like, they have that kind of where even though you hear them in English, they're actually conversing in Russian.
Sokolov says that to Snake. Yeah, your
That's
Russian
right,
is superb. Where did you learn to speak it, etc.
Yeah.
And how can we not talk about the ending? I mean, holy shit, one of the best video game endings when it's revealed that what the boss's mission was. She was originally just meant to get the Philosopher's Legacy from Volgin.
Yeah.
And then he launched that nuke onto Sokolov's research facility, which made America and Russia just go, what the hell's going on? Blah, blah,
exactly.
blah.
You just intensified their...
you need to prove your innocence. You have to take out the boss. You have to destroy the Metal Gear, which is called the Shagohad in this game. Basically, you need to wipe out the Cobra Unit and all of that to prove America's innocence.
Yeah.
And it's later revealed that that whole plan was actually formed by the US.
Yeah.
That the boss had to be taken out, and she knew that her mission, she had to die in the end, but she couldn't kill herself. It had to be left to, her most beloved disciple, that being Snake. And the country really did throw her to the dogs.
Yeah, properly.
No matter, after everything that she's done for them, she's given like her life, her soul, even her child to her country, everything. And they turn around and do that to her. To add salt in the wound, the one that's going to kill you is, the man you love most in this world.
Yeah, your adopted son.
Yeah. And when Big Boss when Naked Snake finds out, he's given the title of Big Boss. You can see him when he's meeting like the president and all the people.
Well, when they go to shake his hand and he just looks at him and just walks off, and they kind of like, does he know?
Yeah, exactly. And he's thinking, you fucking bastard, you made me, I cannot believe what you have done.
Yeah.
And it sort of sets in motion. It sort of answers the question why Big Boss ended up becoming the way he did. Because Metal Gear Solid 3, he's kind of goofy. He looks like you can have a laugh with him.
He's very much like, I don't know if naive's the right word, but maybe. But he's quite, I say, innocent at that point, and you can tell almost from the get-go the difference between like Solid Snake is his clone, but they're very different, very different personalities. Like they sound the same, they look the same, but they managed to really establish the difference well in just the way that he acts and the way that he's always asking questions, and how he's quite not ignorant, but he doesn't quite know all about the pop culture and stuff like that. Where the different codec calls of paramedic, and
after Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 3 has like my favorite codec team.
Yes,
Major Zero, paramedic, Sigint, Eva. Just very memorable characters. Eva, Sigint sort of takes the place as like that Nastasha.
But he's got a bit of a comedic element to him as well.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah, no, I mean,
what do you mean you don't like James Bond?
Yeah. And it's like, this is like,
Is it the girls? Is it the gadgets?
Yeah. And it's a very much, it's a very much homage to James Bond, because even the main theme tune,
is
amazing. It's like, this is like an homage to James Bond in every way, shape, or form.
Also, once again, the soundtrack is very, very good.
Yeah, and it's also it's a different step.
Very fitting for its time as well. Has kind of like very almost has like
it does.
Feels very much of its era.
Yeah,
like the 60s. It has like that 60 spying and espionage sort of vibe to it. From everything from the boss fights to if you've been caught and you're in caution, you have to be careful. great music.
It's the incidental music. The music for me, it's one of the only games, in my opinion, where the music matches the environment that you're in.
Yeah.
Very much the way it parallels how you have to match the environment that you're in as the player. Everything seems to just work in unison with each other in that respect.
And stripping back the technology and sending it back in the past just meant you added an element of challenge, like you say, that wasn't there when you played 2.
Yeah.
The Solidus radar became a bit of a cheat.
Yeah.
With the exception,
back to having to all your things that you can
actually really survive and really be stealthy, and the fact that they added the camouflage mechanics was a perfect example of that.
Even like the design of the Shagohad, it certainly doesn't look as advanced as Rex and Ray.
Yeah.
It's you can sort of suspend your disbelief and think, that could potentially exist. Kind of, it's like this big massive tank, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say it is just very much a big.
It is a big tank which then drives really fast to launch a missile out the front.
Yeah.
The torture scene in that game as well. Holy shit!
Oh, God.
Oh my God! But don't forget before that, because you have to dress up as essentially Raiden.
Was it Colonel Raidanovich?
More crotch grabbing.
Yeah. Vulcan. Who are you? I know the Major better than anyone else.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so you just shag and kill anything that moves. Also, you see like the sort of the torment on Eva's face because she has to be in disguise.
Yeah.
And this whole time she has to basically bear witness to all this horrible shit that's happening because, she
gets tortured as well.
Yeah.
Vulcan's a sadist. He tortures her as well. He's so evil. He just gets,
he gets off on it. And
that's big time.
Classic psycho.
This may sound awful, but frankly, it turns him on. He loves it. He can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
But even like with Big Boss, he beats him to a pop, beats the living crap out of him.
Big Boss we're talking about.
Yeah, and then I keep calling him Big Boss. He is, but he isn't at this point.
Yeah. We'll just call him Big Boss for now.
Yeah, and then he's strapped up like that, and he's on his little tippy toes, and he's got a bag over his head, and he's getting electrified, and he can barely breathe and everything. And just when you think it's over for him, he gets, like Harry said, he gets his eyes shot out. And he can't.
And then it's like, oh, that's the origin of the eye. Yeah.
When the boss took the knife out, because Volgin says, cut out his eyes. I don't like those eyes. You made him a soldier. Now you will unmake him.
Yeah.
And the knife, I think, oh my God, don't tell me this is how he loses his eye.
Yeah.
I thought she was literally going to
go. It's like, oh my God. What do we think of the boss battles in this game?
Overall, I think they're quite strong. It's interesting because if you want to unlock their camouflages, you have to kill them. Not kill them. You have to beat them non-lethally.
Yeah.
Yeah, not tranquilize them.
Yeah. I've done it once. I mean, it's perfectly doable. But frankly, I never really ended up using any of the camouflages I got from them.
No.
I really mainly flick backwards and forwards between 4 camouflages at the entire game. But the boss fight, I think the standout one is easily the end.
Yeah.
I also quite like the Fury, when you're in the darkness, and
that's the big fiery space
flamethrower.
Yeah.
He flies around on the jetpack.
Yeah. Truth be told, I kind of like all of them. There isn't really one that sticks out where I think that's terrible. I think the chase from the Shagohad goes on a little bit too long.
A little bit, yeah. They had to sort of maintain a kind of that weird supernatural element of it, but it works.
Sorrow.
Yeah, exactly. But it kind of works for the context of the game and stuff like that. But the bit that threw me was that you had to do like the revival pill thing.
Oh my God, I was stuck on that for ages.
Me too, because I was like, what is going on? Right, I'll press continue and then you die. Press continue, die. I'm like, what is going on? And then eventually, a bit kind of like how you, going back to Metal Gear Solid 1, where you call Campbell with the Psycho Mantis fight, and just switch control. It's like, there should be some kind of pill in your inventory, and then you finally do the revival pill, and then it carries on. So they've linked back to the breaking the fourth wall in order to carry on with the story kind of thing. So I thought that was
I also like the
but
fact
really frustrating when I didn't know how to do it.
I also like the fact in the Sorrow fight, it depends on how many people you kill, so it
Yeah.
shows you how many ghosts
exactly.
there are.
If you went on a murdering spree, that fight it's not really a
Goes
fight, but
on
it goes on for a
ages.
very, very long time.
And it did for me at first. The
Yeah.
first time I played it, I was kind of adjusted quite well, but I was like, as soon as I get an opportunity to actually use a proper gun, I'm going to do it.
So, anything that we don't particularly like about the game?
I don't remember anything gleaming that was like that really annoyed me. The gameplay wise, it ran really well. The camouflage system worked really, really well.
Yeah, I don't remember there being too much backtracking, if any, really. Apart from obviously
really.
You do the virtuous mission and then you start again. Do you know what I mean?
It's very minor. It's very minor. I think the thing that bugged me a little bit is the camouflage system is great, but it can get to a point where pressing pause, going to the camouflage menu, picking your camouflage, and exiting out can be a little bit annoying. Basically, in Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, the menu's not really intrusive at all. Whereas it can be in Metal Gear Solid 3, whether you're curing yourself or eating food, or you spend a good chunk of that time, or changing your camouflage, you spend a good chunk of your time in that game in the menu.
Healing yourself.
Yeah.
And even then, when you get to a point where it's like, oh no, I'm still not really ready for this fight right now.
No.
But,
also, it's not really a complaint because they rectified it, because the first version of Metal Gear Solid 3 you played on the PlayStation, the camera was bloody terrible.
Oh yeah.
It was a similar camera to Metal Gear 1 and 2. But you didn't have the Soliton radar system in this game, so you would end up getting caught quite a lot because you're constantly pressing first-person view mode to look ahead.
Yeah.
When they released Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, I think it was called, they corrected the camera so you can control the camera movement with the right analog stick. I do think the ending part, the pacing does drag a little bit. I think the chase when you're on Eva's bike goes on for way too long.
Yeah.
Way too long.
And then just when you feel like Vulcan, he comes back again in like the old sort of Hammer horror style, and
And also there's this one final, and it really feels like it's just there to pad out the game. When the bike crashes, it's by far the weakest part of the game for me. When the bike crashes, you've then got to escort Eva through the woods, and you have to keep, and because her stamina drains very quickly, you're literally
she's losing blood, isn't she?
Oh my god.
Yeah, I just forgot about that.
I don't know. Yeah, I can't really think much either. Like, I think they filled out enough of the story in terms of the what's it called, the Philosopher's Legacy and all that sort of stuff. I think maybe if someone's coming to the franchise fresh, they're going to be like, "What the hell does that mean?" Like,
I will say this: do not play this franchise in chronological order, because everything will be spoiled in the first few games. So when when it's revealed who the Patriots are, you're like, "Well, I kind of knew that anyway." But all right then. So overall, Metal Gear Solid 3, masterpiece.
Fantastic.
I think it is
fantastic.
I mean, I would still say my favourite is still the first game, just purely for the unexpected nature of it and how it sort of wound me from the beginning. But in terms of gameplay mechanics and the sheer emotional drainage almost that you get at the end, but then you kind of it does sort of pad Big Boss as more than just
he needed to be padded. He needed to be expanded on. I totally get your point with Metal Gear Solid 1. I have a ton of nostalgia for it. I really do love the game, but Metal Gear Solid 3, it's something special, and I think it might be the one I have played and completed the most. I think it is.
Oh, really?
Between that or the first one.
Yeah.
It's one of those games I never ever get bored of playing, and when I do play it, I'm watching every single cutscene, listening to all the codec conversations.
Because again, there's another game where there's certain things that I play. When I play it, I pick up on, and I'm like, oh, okay. Because I suppose playing it with older eyes and ears and stuff, you kind of sort of understand a little bit more about just the backstory about the Cold War and stuff like that, and how that relates to what they were trying to accomplish and stuff. So yeah, I've got nothing but respect for it.